Hey folks, Lum Ramayashi here. You know what they say, out with the old, in with the new? Well, to follow that tradition and begin the new year with a clean slate, I wanted to finally release a podcast that has been long overdue. Our review of the Black Clover anime. We recorded this discussion with Annalisa Crispin, letterer for Black Clover and Weekly Shonen Jump, and Maxie Bernard, host of Friendship Effort Victory, the weekend after the first episode came out. This podcast was meant to come out the week after, but one thing led to another, and here we are, 3 months later. So obviously, there are many things we talked about in this podcast that are out of date. The anime has turned out to be a year longer instead of a one core, and the pacing has been a lot slower than we could have ever predicted. Additionally, because we recorded so early, we didn't get the chance to address the dub, and never could we have expected the show to begin broadcasting on Toonami only 2 months after its debut? Just shows how a lot can happen in the anime world in 3 months, which makes timely reviews like this hard to keep relevant if you don't get them out in time. No wonder every AniTuber made a Black Clover video the month it came out to capitalize on the discussion while it was hot. Unfortunately, I had other priorities that kept pushing the release date on this podcast back until now. But even though we only talked about the first episode, I think most of our observations remain relevant to the discourse on the series as a whole, and it's a fun discussion still worth listening to. Considering we approach the anime from the perspective of manga readers who appreciate the series, our thoughts and opinions are very different than most of the anime reviewers you might have heard talk about the show. Of course, our discussion is limited by having only seen the first episode at the time of recording, and I'm hoping we'll be able to reconvene with Annalisa and Maxie at a later date to give a more fleshed out review. But to comment on the dub for just a brief moment, since we don't do it in the podcast proper, I would like to say that I think it's very good and arguably superior to the Japanese version. Asta's dub actor Dallas Reed is much more experienced and has more range than his Seiyuu counterpart, making for a performance that is far less grating and much more compelling. All the other performances in Funimation's dub are pretty strong too. Nothing stand out, but they all fit the characters as good, if not better, than their Japanese counterparts. If you were initially turned off by Asta's Seiyuu screaming, I'd highly recommend trying the English dub instead. And you can watch it every Saturday night at 10:30 PST on Toonami, so hey, why not? Additionally, I want to comment on the anime original material they've padded the show out with. It's been a mixed bag, and the stretching of the comedy scenes in particular are very boring, and often grating because of that music, that da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da. I'm not fond of that OST track. However, I appreciate them devoting more time to Yuno and developing his character arc a little more than in the manga. I think that the original content involving him, like the 13th episode for example, do a really good job in making him feel like a more rounded character and a proper deuteragonist, which is what the manga presents him as, but doesn't effectively execute because we go for such long stretches without seeing what he's up to or how he really grows as a mage. And the cameos the anime has added into the show, like scenes with Rebecca interacting with Finral in town, or a brief preview of what Grey looks like untransformed as she walks around in the background of a scene, is really neat as manga viewers who knows what's up. And I like Magna's backstory with the town elder who got murdered. It really added some interesting, if maybe not canonically relevant, context to his character. So I think there's a lot of good additive filler in the Black Clover anime, especially all the bits involving Yuno, but the pacing and dragging out of events is another matter. It's taking way too long to get to the most exciting and interesting material, and they aren't doing a very good job at leaving off at good cliffhangers that make you want to see what happens next week, which is critical for a long-running shonen. In the first 13 episodes, they've only adapted a volume and a half of the manga, about 10 chapters. Compare that with 2.5 volumes and 23 chapters for My Hero Academia's first season. I already thought that the first season of the MHA anime was slow, but Black Clover is another extreme entirely. I can't fathom why they're going this slow unless they're truly planning to make it a long runner instead of just a year longer. But most long-running indefinite adaptations know to get their strongest material out of the way first before slowing down, and Black Clover is still trudging along in the earlier, weaker stuff. Critical reception to the anime is not great, and neither is community reception. The series has more 1-star reviews than 5-star ones on Crunchyroll. It's hard to see the series winning people back who have lost interest in it. There are just so many questionable adaptation choices all around, really, and I'd like to get into them more at a later date, hopefully with Annalisa and Maxie. Finally, I just want to update you guys on the state of our various podcasts. This is the first episode of a new podcast subseries called Manga Mavericks and Anime, in which we'll talk about anime. Naturally. That said, don't expect another one of these out anytime soon. Colton and I normally share editing duties on Manga Mavericks, but I exclusively edit all of these side podcasts, including Manga Mavericks Add Movies and Manga Fights, as well as handling everything involving the YouTube channel, including the exclusive content on there like the Juni Taisen and Kino's Journey reviews. However, I'm currently swamped with work on my thesis film and preparing portfolios for job interviews and internships. That's why this podcast was so late. I can only edit these when I don't have any other responsibilities to attend to, and unfortunately, I can't devote any time to editing podcasts myself for the foreseeable future. So while the main Manga Mavericks podcast is back in session now that Colton's returned and he can edit them, the side podcasts are going to have to go on hiatus, at least until I graduate in May. It's a shame because I had a lot of topics I had in mind to podcast, and there's plenty of backlog content for Manga Mavericks Add Movies that I still haven't gone around to editing, but I have to prioritize school and work over my hobby. At least until the day comes where I can make my hobbies my job, and unfortunately I'm not there yet. But that's why I wanted to get this episode, this discussion of the Black Clover anime done and out of the way before the year was over, so I can go into next year with no pressing podcast responsibilities to attend to, nothing that I absolutely need to edit in a timely manner, because all the movie reviews and that manga fight that I still haven't gotten around to editing, I can still sit on those for a while and they'll still be enjoyable and relevant. But this discussion, already in 3 months, there is a lot that has become a little irrelevant because we've just waited so long and it's such a timely based review. So I needed to get this out as soon as possible. So this is my last responsibility that I had to edit before next year, and hopefully I can get around to all that backlog stuff that I've recorded, and I can edit that once I'm done with my film and just all these school and work responsibilities. Well, that took a long time to say, but with all that out of the way, I think we are finally ready to listen to our Black Clover discussion proper. Hasta la vista, baby! Welcome to a special Manga Mavericks bonus podcast about the Black Clover anime. We thought it'd be a fun idea to do this follow-up to our Black Clover discussion last March, and people have been asking, what are your thoughts on the Black Clover anime? Will you do a podcast with Black Clover anime? We're doing it! And we've got the whole crew back on board with Annalisa.
Woo! It's me.
And Maxie!
I was trying to think of a clever quote. Not yet. That's how Asta would sound in my dub.
And Colton's here too.
Nah.
What? Wheelor GTC, what are you doing here?
I'm just wandering around. Just heard some Black Clover stuff of this and I don't know. I'm just here. I live here.
That's true, you do live here. It would be very easy for you to, like, snoop in and, like, open the door. And, like,
I mean, you are normally in the same room whenever an episode's being recorded anyway, so it's like we just had to push you forward a little bit towards the microphone.
Pretty much. I usually just walk in randomly, grab stuff.
Yeah,
and if Sid's screaming, I walk out. Like, during, like, the cross-account rant.
Oh, yeah. You walked in, like, right when I was screaming about it.
And I'm just like, okay, what the heck is he talking about?
And just back out of the room. Just back out.
Yeah.
Podcasting must sound, like, crazy to everyone else who lives in this house. Because they're like, what is he even talking
Especially
about?
since the door we use is fairly thin, so you can, like, hear most of Sid's yelling, like, throughout the house.
I need to find a more soundproof room. But, unfortunately, Colton cannot join us today, so Wheelord is stepping in very graciously. But, we're excited to talk about the first episode of the Black Clover anime done by Studio Pierrot, just released this season. And we want to talk about what we thought of it as an adaptation. And what we thought its strengths were, what our expectations were going into it, and what we're hoping to see from this adaptation going forward. I wanted to focus on the Black Clover anime as an adaptation, because we talked a lot about our thoughts on the first chapter back when we did our Black Clover podcast in March, so I wanted to really focus on how we thought of the anime as an adaptation, and some things we found very interesting about what they kind of did to bring the material to life in animated form. Okay, so structurally, we'll just go through, our initial impressions and then just find our way through there. I got a bunch of, staff listings for both the first episode of the TV anime, as well as the OVA last year from Jump Festa. And so, I think we should start with what our expectations were for the Black Clover TV anime. Because with Studio Pierrot's name attached, that can be a mixed bag. They've done some really good work in their adaptations, but also they've done some very questionable things too, like with Tokyo Ghoul.
Or Tokyo Ghoul.
Yeah. With the Tokyo Ghoul adaptation, they really rushed through that material, and then in the second core, they went off in a completely different direction. And it's very strange to me that they're making a Tokyo Ghoul RE anime now, but, the end of Square Root of A is, completely different than the manga.
In the press release, though, they said it's going to take place 2 years after Root A, so it seems like they're going to rework it as the sequel to Root A.
I saw on Twitter, I forget who clarified this, but that was a mistranslation.
Oh, that must have been Yonko, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, who knows what they're doing then?
I think it is just going to pretend that Square Root of A didn't happen, but the events of the manga happened. So they're gonna Blue Exorcist Kyoto Saga it.
I'd be down for that.
So, there are some expectations from this adaptation, or at least some reservations, because who knows what they would do with it? Would they truncate the material? Would they really slow it down? Like some of the really slow stretches of Naruto Shippuden were. We just didn't know. And we also wondered about kind of just how it would look aesthetically, because Naruto Shippuden, there are some amazing highs in terms of the animation, but there are also some noticeable, down points as well, which is to be expected in a long-running anime, but we just don't know, what kind of talent was going to go into this, and, really how it would look and how the animation would really be. I think that based on Twin Star Exorcist from last year, I was expecting pretty reasonable production, because Twin Star Exorcist was a year-long production, but it had pretty solid animation throughout its run. I didn't end up watching the entire show, but I stepped back into it from time to time, and whenever I did, it looked pretty solid. I want to ask you guys, Annalisa, Maxie, what did you expect from the Studio Pierrot adaptation? Did you have any reservations, or were you just really optimistic about it?
Well, I had really no expectations because of the World Trigger anime, which I know was done by Toei, but I was really hoping the World Trigger anime would be good, and it was not at all. So my only thought was just let it be better than World Trigger. Just let it be a better adaptation than World Trigger. And so, I've been very pleased with the first episode because it's much better than the World Trigger anime.
That's very true. I'm very glad for that. But what about you, Maxie?
I kind of only really had a couple of expectations because Studio Pierrot, like, the main thing I get from them is that their sense of colour is kind of, it's very vibrant, but it doesn't always sit very nicely on the eye. Like, literally, you can go as far back as, like, Ninku in the 90s, which is, like, one of my favourite anime. The colours are a bit weird. Or Hikari no Go, amazing anime. Colours are a little bit weird. And, I mean, even Bruto now, like, they have a sense of colour where stuff just clashes uncomfortably. And so I was worried it would have a bit of that, or worse, it would stretch the story out. Like, My Hero Academia worked out super well for people. It did have the problem of dragging out what should have been, like, first chapter, first episode, like, make it all flow together, which the manga did as well. Like, My Hero Academia started weirdly roughly, but I'm digressing. So I was a little worried about how they would fit the first chapter of Black Clover, which is arguably the chapter that causes people the most trouble content-wise when it comes to, like, dunking on it. I was a little worried that would get too much airtime and people wouldn't stick around for, you know, the better stuff that happens immediately after. And I don't mean to overplay my hands. They've kind of done that. But that's fine, we'll get to that. So, yeah, expectations were awkward colours and fears about how they do with pacing.
It's interesting you mentioned the color design in the show, because I actually think that's one of its big strengths. I really love the color palette in this.
Oh, I absolutely do as well.
I think there's, like, a really strong contrast.
Like, it surprised the heck out of me. There's a soft sort of glow to everything in the evening scenes in this episode that really makes what would be sort of harsh colours against each other blend nicely and look like a sort of a really high quality scene. Which is great. Like, I'm really glad that, like, that prediction from me as such turned out to be pretty wrong.
Yeah, there are really good use of shadows and really great lighting. Like, one really memorable scene to me is when Asta's, like, leaping, like, from the trees to, like, interfere with that guy who's trying to, you know, take the grimoire from Yuno, and, like, there's this great shot of, like, Asta, like, in the air, and, like, his jump is, like, framed with him, like, being in the center of the sun, in the evening sun, like, the evening colors in that scene is just really beautiful, as is, like, the lighting effects. I think that the lighting, the color design in the show is just really makes it pop. In the morning scenes, it looked great at the beginning of the episode, and looked really, really great in the evening scenes towards the end of the episode, the colors they used there. Like, very heavy use of, like, red tones during the evening scenes that I thought really worked well.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that is one of the strengths to this adaptation, that I actually think it got off to a stronger start than My Hero Academia. Because with My Hero Academia, I felt like it didn't really pop visually to me. I thought that the palette, it was very much like what I was expecting as an adaptation from the manga. It did fit it with, like, the colors Horikoshi used in his illustrations. But it just seemed a little too light to me. It didn't seem that big a contrast between, like, the lights and the darks, you know, that would really make it pop. And it got better about that as the show went on. But in that first episode, I think maybe it was, like, just too bright, it felt to me. But I think also because the course of this episode took place throughout an entire day, so we got this contrast between morning scenes, afternoon scenes, and then evening scenes. Like, there were a lot of contrast in scenes, and also allowed for a lot of different tones to be created in scenes through the different uses of color during the different times of day. I think that the director of photography made some really good calls in suggesting these lighting choices.
Agreed.
Yes.
I don't know why I said it in a voice.
And I also want to talk now of what we thought about, like, the animation in this first episode, because I was really surprised there was some really great character animation in this. And also just some really cool, like, visual gags that they added in that I just really love.
Yeah, I was so pleasantly surprised, because I kind of saw, like, so the rumor is it's going to be 13 episodes, but, I mean, Pierrot does very long Shonen Jump series. So I was like, okay, well, they could make this into a long-running anime, so, you know, I just kind of expected, like, low mediocre animation, and I was really surprised, because, yeah, there are a lot of good character moments, and there's a lot of nifty little animation scenes. So I was very happy with that.
I think I was expecting a little bit higher because I had seen Boruto earlier in the year and I was like, wow, the first episode of Boruto, it has some really good animation. It's actually really well done. And so because of Boruto, I was thinking, okay, I think Perot has a really good staff working there right now. So I'm really expecting some really good animation from Black Clover too. And there was some really good animation. I think that it's just the little scenes also that have really good animation. It's very underrated just how important it is to have good movement during talking scenes to make sure that what you're watching doesn't feel stiff. This is a problem that I had with the Jump Festa OVA last year, is that, a lot of the times it felt very stiff. The characters' movements and even when they were interacting with each other. But here, I still got, that sense of life. It's not like the characters were, constantly moving. This wasn't a trigger show. But, just in terms of, the pacing of scenes and the art direction, and then, what they did with the animation, you never got the sense that, okay, we're just watching this still image and only the lip flaps are moving.
Yeah.
So there were moments of, minimal animation, but they pulled off the illusion of, selling the scene and, that this was, living, breathing world very well. And that's something that I think is really underrated when you're looking at, animation. But I'd also love just, some of these small scenes that they, really flourish with their animation. The scene where Asta is about to chop the piece of wood.
I love that scene!
Yeah, there's just this great motion from him when he's, lifting up the axe. Just some really solid animation, and the perspective is really great as well. You're seeing it from, the logs in the foreground, we have it, center in the screen, and then, we're looking up at Asta as he's about to, push down the axe. It's just a really good shot, and, the emotion really carries it. I think that the show is doing a really good job with, its shot compositions.
Yeah.
And framing. And, speaking of that, I want to talk about, that scene, the fight at the end. I keep forgetting who the villain of this first episode chapter is.
I just call him
Bad
Shane Guy.
CG.
His name is Renchi.
Renchi, yes. Now, to mention that CG, Maxie, you're right. That CG chain was definitely not the best rendered they could do. It definitely looked a little out of place with the world. Something from...
It's the thing, for all the praise we were giving the animation just now, I was it was really amazing all the way through. Except that.
That's how you know he's a bad guy.
The animation of the chain itself was really good. And I loved what they did with the chain in terms of framing. With the chain, that they have it, constantly moving across the screen, but it also, blocks up part of the screen. So what you get with that is that you get, a great sense of, framing, focus within shots. Your eyes are directed to certain elements of the screen and just focus in on certain characters. So I really loved how they used the chain to, break up the shots like that. And there's this really great moment also where, the chain user, I think, is in the foreground, and then we have Yuno kind of in the background. It's a out of focus shot with him in there, and that looked really good.
Is that the one where it fades up to the horizon or whatever, or is that the one?
I'm not sure, but there's just this really good a shot like that I was really impressed by. I think that again the framing shot composition's really beautiful. As far as the chain itself goes, now he mentioned it was not rendered well, but again, I do think the animation on the chain was pretty good. It was fine. It's just that, the lighting needed to be fixed.
Yeah, the lighting and the texture on it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the big problem is, it did not blend well. And you can see at other times, the grimoires will be CG, but they look okay, so you don't notice that they're CG unless you pay attention directly to them. But yeah, these chains, I hope they get cleaned up when this goes to DVD.
Hopefully. As it is, they aren't the worst CG in the world.
Oh no, I mean we mentioned World Trigger just 10 minutes ago. And if you want to talk misuse of CG for special effects, that's the big crime in recent history. But I think the only reason it bummed me out at all is that it stood out.
Yeah,
I'm sure they will find a way to get around that. But it was almost to the point where, because it was so clearly different from the 2D animation page, it almost felt like it was moving at a different frame rate. It was just a very uncanny valley experience.
Yeah,
I can. That's not right.
Yeah, the animation definitely felt out of place with the chain against, like, the traditional animation. I think, though, that fight scene was done very well, though. Like, in the OVA, it felt very flat. Like, in terms of, like, how it begins, how it progresses, just wasn't very memorable. Again, I mentioned before, like, the scene where Asta is, like, jumping from the trees to, like, interfere in this fight. And, like, in the show, it's just really good. We get this great, like, shot of him, again, like, framed against the sun as he's jumping, and the comedic timing with him slamming against the wall is really good. And they add in this great extra joke, where he, like, gets up and he's like, hey, I'm here to stop! And then he looks and he's, like, looking at the wrong guy. He's looking at the asshole,
Yeah.
like, other guy, and the other guy's, like, shifting his eyes to the villain. Asta, like, takes a pause, and then he, like, turns and then addresses the villain like nothing's happened. It's, like, this really great small little joke.
And, you know,
it's
great because it seems like such an Asta thing to do, too. You know, like,
yeah.
I'm gonna beat you. Oh, wait, hold on a sec. I'm gonna beat you up. Yeah, you know, like, they did a really good job.
Like in the OVA, like in the OVA version, I feel like it was very much trying to just cover the bases from the manga, just make sure to cover, like, all, like, the story beats. Where in the Parole version, this episode, it really felt like they were trying to kind of enhance the experience a lot more with all the lighting effects, with Asta's movements, and with the fight scene itself, where, like, it's a lot more, I guess, dynamic.
Yeah.
Just like Asta trying to run up to the chain user and just, like, trying to hit him. Like, it looks way better than you think. It's awesome.
They add in a lot more movement. They have a lot more interesting shot compositions. In the OVA, it's like the scene is taking place during the afternoon. So it's like very standard lighting, not a whole lot of contrast in the scene. And the way the fight is shot is just, it's not very dynamic. It's pretty straightforward. And, like, one big moment that I think you compare is, like, when Asta is getting hit by the serpent viper attack. I forget its exact name, but, like, this big attack that kind of, like, rips into him. In the TV anime, like, we have a big red screen. There's some really great sound effects going on. I think, like, even though they pause on a still image there, that's a really well-drawn image, so, like, we get the impact. Like, it's really good. And then in the OVA, it's just such a wash. It's not, like, really memorable at all.
Like, the change just
happens too quickly. Like, with the show, they linger on it for a good number of seconds, so you get the impact. So, the pacing of the fight is so much better.
Yeah, like, in the OVA, the chains just come at Asta and he gets wounded. Like, there's no real, I guess, sense of tension.
Yeah.
Because, like, they don't really build it up well.
Say what you will about how the CG looks, like, at least the chains do convey a more sense of menace, I feel, with the way that they're constantly moving around the screen. Like they are snake-like, you know, it does give the sense that this is really threatening guy, this is really dangerous, and Asta cannot let down his guard. And it also gives, like, this very claustrophobic vibe, because the chains are constantly crossing each other. So, like, they're creating this closed space. So there's, like, this sense of no escape. Like, there's really good visual communication of, like, ideas and, like, the tension in the scene that I really appreciated. Did you guys, like, have any particular moments and scenes, especially during the fight, where you thought, wow, this, like, really popped in a way that I didn't expect?
Oh, the actual moment of Asta's grimoire coming out to him and going through the sequence of, like, what each leaf on the clovers mean, like how 3's your magic power, 4's like divine strength, and then 5's like the devil. That's a scene that I was really worried wasn't going to be, like, super impacting, but it totally worked as the sort of the end point for the episode.
Yeah.
Just really, really nice.
Yeah, like, the dramatic swell during that scene is really good. Like, they really sold, and the 5-leaf clover, it represents the devil. Again, in the OVA, this scene I felt just went by way too fast, and again, the colors just were not, like, striking enough. But again, the dark shadows here, like, Asta's, like, green eyes, like it really pops in the show.
It's such a strange thing to think about, because the OVA covers more than this episode.
It does.
But This episode does it in just a way better way. Like, all the scenes, I feel, are executed far better because of just how they're directed and how they look.
The pacing, I think, is a lot better. In the Jump Festa special, everything, I think, is just going by way too fast. And then there are times where I felt there were scenes like they were way too slow. There are other interesting changes, too, that, like, convey a different sense of tone. One really notable one to me was when Yuno is telling Asta, hey, your sister is a nun, she can't get married. Also, you're 15, so you can't get married. So in the manga and the Jump Festa special, like, this is, like, kind of a more comedic moment, I suppose. And we see kind of like chibi faces, super deformed faces of like Asta and Yuno, like against the sky. And so we just see dialogue bubbles there in the manga. And then the Jump Festa special, they convey that with just like two faces like talking, like against the sky. Just this detached kind of aside of the scene. But then in this TV anime, like, they don't play it off as more of a community moment. Like, Yuno just says it, like, very straight-faced. I mean, it's still, like, a funny sentiment. But, like, the way they present it is not, like, as flippant a manner as it was in the Jump Festa special and manga. It was very interesting that they made a change like that. To me, it was interesting because they were trying to keep, like, this consistent kind of tone, I think, with this first episode. I noticed they were taking out these comedic bits that wouldn't gel, that would feel kind of jarring if they just did them. So they kind of, like, made everything feel more diegetic in the world, I suppose. At least in terms of the tone that they're trying to go for with the show. Which isn't that different from the manga, but it is slightly different in terms of, like, how they're presenting certain things.
I mean, it felt like they were, at least with that stuff with, Yuno's matter-of-fact statements, like, against Asta marrying sister, I feel like that was more to do than anything with the fact that, like, Yuno at the start of Black Clover, as much as he was, like, this sort of stoic character, wasn't really established as this sort of just instinctively try-hard cool. And, like, having that established now in the comics way, he almost can't help but try and be cool, even if it means he's gonna, like, get close to passing out in a hot springs or whatever. I feel like that sort of, is a lot more present in this first episode because, like, he's saying things about fact, he's being dismissive, but it doesn't read as, what people originally meant, or going, oh, it's just like Sasuke. It just kind of reads off as him being very, very
straightforward.
Yeah, compared to Asta's incredible screamy wackiness, which, actually, that has to be said. The voice actor for Asta, a lot of people have been moaning about this, but I think it's, on a technicality, it is the most perfect voice for him.
It's really... Okay, so I didn't watch this episode until like a day and a half after it came out for various reasons. And all I heard was, oh god, I still hate Black Clover, and I hate Asta even more that he has this super whiny voice. And I was like, oh dear. Then I watched it and I was like, oh, that's Asta. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of a whiny voice, but it's not that whiny. And
I mean, it's more just over-enthusiastic screaming.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, I think the thing that if I had to complain about something is that when he shouts stuff, he'll pull out that last syllable, like, I'll get you!
Yeah.
I'm not done yet! I'm like, okay, I could see that getting annoying, but like, I was so happy because I was so sure, like, oh no, if Asta's voice sucks, this series is not gonna do well. But I was like, oh no, it's very Asta, and I could see how people could be annoyed with this type of voice, but I thought it was perfect for him. And I don't think it's that annoying.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but is the voice for Asta, I think they're a relative newcomer to anime voice acting?
They are a newcomer.
Yeah, they're pretty new.
The voice actor for Asta is Gakuto Kajiwaro, and Asta is actually his first ever role.
Which is
so
insane
this is a
to me.
complete newbie. Like, he's so good for a first-time role.
Yeah.
Like, I thought he captured the character perfectly.
You have to assume he got cast through audition, like, purely on the strength of doing, like, Asta's over-enthusiastic scream. And, yeah, that's probably going to get old quite quickly, but it's literally the entire essence of his character.
Yeah. Energy, enthusiasm, and just go, go, go. That's Asta, and that's what his voice sounds like.
Yeah, it's a perfect voice for Asta. I'm, like, really impressed with the voice actor for doing such a good job. As far as Asta rolling his syllables when he's yelling, that's something that the OVA actor for him, Shunhori, also did. So that's something that's also just, I think, very in line with a character like Asta, who is, like, constantly yelling and, like, constantly, like, upbeat, energetic, and it's like, I'm not gonna give up! Not gonna
That's how we speak in the manga. I mean, it's harder in our English adaptation to kind of pull that last syllable out just because of the difference between, Japanese and English, but, like, he's always yelling things with that, like, extension on that last word or last syllable. And, I mean, you can see it in some of the English versions where it's like, like, oh, I'm gonna defeat you, and he'll be like, no, you're not! He'll put, like, 20 O's in that.
I think so much as well, it just, people read it because the nature of Weekly Shonen Jump manga in particular as being something that people almost skim through, it's made for really fast consumption of like 400 pages each week.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it necessarily registers that that's what Asta's doing the whole time. And so now, of course, when they're sat down and there's a set time it takes for him to say everything, the reality of the character is sinking in. And that could go wrong. I mean, say, if it doesn't at least have a couple of quieter moments by, say, the time that Noelle's appeared and they've gone through her first little storyline, like, that would probably be a breaking point for a lot of people, because, I mean, that's going to be like 5 episodes of him doing that sort of scream. But at the same time, I kind of just want him to stick to performing that particular way, just to agitate everyone.
I'm so at the same level, like, yeah, just do it, because that's who you are, Asta. And at the same time, please don't do that. I want everybody to love you. Please don't do that, buddy. Please.
I'm the same way as well. Like, it's such a perfect performance for Asta, but at the same time, it is one of the reasons that people are getting a little turned off by this adaptation, and newcomers are, like, kind of turning away. There's some friends of mine on Animation Revelation who really got hung up on that, and they were like, oh god, this screaming is just horrible.
I feel like kids would love it. Like, cause it's a voice that you imitate. Like, you can't help but just do it.
Boys love it.
And
mothers hate it.
Kids do really like screaming. That can be a good and or bad thing, but like you definitely see that trend in a lot of modern animation for children, that like characters are constantly screaming. You'll see that a lot in Teen Titans Go, for example. Not trying to say anything about Teen Titans Go. I'm just saying that is a thing that is very notable about that show, and you can definitely see it also in a lot of contemporary Japanese animation. Honestly, a lot of older animation in general. That animation aims to skew the younger audiences will have more like screaming characters. Black Clover is like really no different in this regard, and I don't think it's like more extreme. I just think that because Asta yells almost every sentence, it's just more noticeable.
She's just got so much energy.
Yeah.
I think once they actually start the fights themselves in the anime, I think people will be more tolerant of it. Because, like, a scream just, like, out of nowhere can get annoying, but I think in the tension of a battle it would actually fit really well.
Yeah. Like, I think people were really, like, thrown off by, like, that first scene where Asta is, like, proposing to the sister, and he's, like, yelling every line during that sequence, and then after, Yuno stops him, like, he continues to yell at Yuno, and just this, like, a long sequence of him only yelling, never, like, taking a breath and just talking normally. So I think that, like, really was, like, a compressed bit that just, like, really rubbed people the wrong way. Like, if it was, like, spread out more, if, like, there were more, like, breather moments between his screaming, like, people probably would not have, noticed and, like, gotten that annoyed by it. Or at least as annoyed as I'm seeing people getting.
Yeah.
Which, this actually kind of reminds me of something I was going to ask, because like a real professional podcaster, I didn't think about rereading the first chapter of Black Clover before coming on this. I feel like they added a few things to the start of the story, like particularly with Asta and Yuno as babies.
They did. That was another very interesting thing to me.
That seemed like a very odd decision, because the whole time past that point, I was like, now I know you're not going to finish the first chapter.
Eyes narrow. Ooh, I'm onto you now.
It's like I'd cracked some sort of secret code. I was like, I see what you've done. You've dragged this out. But like the additional scenes, I feel like did add a fair bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. They added a lot to tone, too. I really like that scene where we see Asta, getting dropped off at the orphanage, and we see the father, pick them up. And I think baby Asta is just the most adorable thing, how energetic he was even as a kid. And, he kicks the father, and his face starts bleeding, but he's like, "Aw, this little...
Yeah.
I'll take care of both of you."
Well, one thing I found that was interesting that is not in the first chapter, and maybe we see this later, I'd have to go back and look, but when Asta's grimoire opens up, you can see the spell writing on it, and it looks more like Eastern characters like kanji, whereas everybody else's grimoire is more of a Western scripty look.
That's really interesting. That's good foreshadowing. I think that has been brought up in the manga before, later. I don't know if it wasn't.
I feel like it goes further to explain why Yaui's got a fondness for Asta in the comic as well. Oh, I need to check this now. That's got me thinking.
Yeah, checking through the first chapter, no, we don't see inside the grimoire.
Like the book opens up, but all you see is white pages.
Yeah, I feel like the first time we see any writing in it is in the fight with Mars.
I think so, yeah.
Let me check those files.
Where are you covered?
Let's all stop podcasting. We need to know.
This is important, okay?
We have stopped the podcast to look things up before. Speaking of additional scenes that I found really interesting, that red-haired orphan kid, they place a lot more emphasis on him in this first episode than they did in the first chapter or the Jump Festa OVA. You have these shots of him, particularly during the magic ceremony where, everyone's giving their grimoires, where he's we have, these shots of him, just looking at Asta and, reacting kind of to Asta's situation when he doesn't get the grimoire, and then when people are making fun of him at the end, and Yuno says, "No, it's not possible for you to be my rival." You have, these very notable cutaways to a shot of this character just looking out at Asta, with this disappointed kind of look on his face. And I just thought it was very interesting that it emphasized the reaction of this very minor character. Never see again.
Yeah, we haven't seen him at all since.
But it was very interesting to me. They were giving him a lot more focus in this first chapter. And I wonder why they did that. Because he is, such a minor character. Even as far as characters who don't appear past this first chapter go, you would think that you would maybe give these kind of scenes to the nun, where, she's looking sadly that Asta hasn't gotten grimoire or something. But no, they're focusing on this kid and his disappointment in Asta.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in seeing, why. I'm interested in knowing why they're doing that. I think, there's this obvious idea, this kid feels, bad for Asta. He does, care about him, but, he's screwing up and he's disappointed in that because he's older than him or whatever.
I feel like on some level, they give him a bit more ground because he's the same sort of age as, the bottom end of what the viewers for this show would be. And so it's a relatable point. By him being critical of Asta, it makes the audience think oh, what if he's not very good? What if he's not a very good hero? Because that way your expectations get defied all the more. But I mean that's probably projecting a little.
Actually, I think that's a brilliant point. He could be used as an audience surrogate. The perspective of the audience on Asta, their disappointment in Asta. I mean, I was feeling this sad for Asta. I knew he's gonna get his grimoire, and I'm still in that scene they did well, so I'm I feel bad for you.
Yeah, I feel so bad watching this episode. I was I feel just like I did when I read the chapter the first time, everybody around you, they're just such jerks. You try really hard, buddy, and I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I found where we see inside Asta's grimoire for the first time. And it really is like kanji, they're very square characters. Also of note, when Yuno gets Sylph, it looks like wingdings. That spell is not this Western scripty look. It looks like weird wingdings.
Wow. Wingdings.
And if you kind of look so this is volume 3, pages 83 and 84, they almost look like they could be the same sort of text, the Sylph spell, and then Asta's second sword spell. It almost looks like it could be the same text. One's almost drawn with a pen, and another's drawn with very sharp lines. And so I'm probably looking way too far into this, but it's interesting.
This is great. We are officially just starting our own little sort of Black Clover conspiracy about the text in the books. Because I've never heard this anywhere else, and so now we've got this.
We did this, guys. We did this.
We're pioneering.
Black Clover analysis.
We're giving Black Clover the analysis it deserves.
Yeah, that's right.
We are now the manga theorists.
It's just a theory, a manga theory.
Oh, I have to address it because a few people said this to me recently. I know I don't say manga right. I don't know why I can't change it to kind of getting the A sound correctly. It's the one thing in my life I've not been able to correct since I was 13. So, they don't need to go and tell me after they listen to this episode.
Oh, you know they
I
will.
know.
They will
It's
now,
fine. People
definitely.
mispronounce manga and anime different things all the time. Manga, minga,
Mango.
manga, like, so many weird pronunciations.
Oh, God. Just, guys, Black Clover's really good.
It's really good, guys.
I just wanted to say.
Yeah.
I was really impressed by this first episode and the adaptational choices they made and like how well made it was. Like this is a really well made production. I think that's one thing that I'm seeing from a lot of critics. Like they might not be into the story, but they're acknowledging, the show is pretty well made. I'll give it credit for that.
I've been very pleased because people will be like, oh, this first episode reminds me why I hate Asta, but the episode looks good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Uh-huh.
That's what we do. It's like, with Black Clover, we take off small victories.
Yeah, yeah.
Just...
Any win's a
Yeah.
win.
I think it's good because, a great production can, like, really help elevate a story. I enjoy Black Clover, but I definitely think in the right hands, like, it can be made even better through very inventive uses of the cinematic language and really great animation.
Yeah, and Black Clover, it's such a action-heavy series that I think the fight scenes are really going to make or break this, and signs are pointing to positive right now, so, like, come on, guys.
Yeah, based on that preview at the end of the episode where, like, Asta's about to move with his sword, it just looks like there's going to be, like, some huge action scene coming up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all I really ask of them is just that, I don't know, when it comes time to show off Asta's freakish muscles, they just use, like, their highest level animators, get really deep in a ridiculous detail on his, like, gross buffness.
Have like, sweat just glistening down them. Oh, please. Please.
Like, this needs to be
if
their
they
sort
could
of their
animate that.
SpongeBob or Ren and Stimpy moment where it just, like, zooms in into just an incredibly highly rendered drawing.
That'd be amazing.
Man, if they could keep, like, all the complexity of, like, Asta's, like, muscle body, like, translate that well with the animation and make it look really good, that would be pretty awesome.
I think
It's really hard, but, like...
it does well to just get across how hard a worker he is, how much he's actually put into being, like, the sort of character to back up his loudness.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, like, I feel like missing that would actually kind of be a bit of a weird bummer.
Yeah, that'd be a huge disappointment.
But, I mean, they've managed to kind of nail things I was worried about at first. Like, from all the promotional images, I was terrified that they were going to go and get Asta's face wrong. Because, like, the eyes were never quite right, or his
Yeah.
face looked a little too soft. And then the episode actually came out, and I don't know if they'd, like, had heard feedback or something, but it looks like they really went back to the drawing board to kind of just get everything just so.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
definitely a little, like, I saw the first, key art come out, and I was like, well, we'll see when it airs, yeah. I'm not gonna get my hopes up, but yeah, like, I forgot about the initial key art until just this morning as I was, walking around trying to gather my thoughts. I was like, oh yeah, those look kind of weird, didn't they?
Yeah, I was like, with those original character designs that, we first got for the show, I was a little concerned about how they would look in motion, but I guess you couldn't, like, really tell from just those still images, like, just how they would look, and especially because, like, the lighting on those character designs, like, the shading, it wasn't, that strong, but, like, when you see it in the show, like, what really sells how the characters look is the shading. It's, like, the lighting of scenes, and how the characters pop against the backgrounds. So, like, it really is the presentation of the show that really, like, sells the character designs as well, because they feel so natural and distinct in the world.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So again, just really well-made production. I was definitely very happy with how this turned out. I remember, like, with My Hero Academia, that's a great adaptation, but with that first episode, I was definitely not as enthusiastic about it, because I just didn't feel like they did a whole lot of interesting things in terms of the direction. I didn't think that, like, the colors really popped. Like, it felt like the manga in motion, but not much more than that. But I think that with the Black Clover adaptation, Studio Pierrot has really put some real thought into, like, how to, like, take these scenes from the manga and just, like, really bring them to life in animation in interesting ways, through interesting uses of the form of the image, cinematic language. I just really thought that it was a well-done adaptation.
Yeah.
This is, it's, like, great to, like, compare the first episode of the show with, like, the OVA they did from last year by Zebek, and, like, it's, like, night and day in terms of how you can take the same material, and then you have, like, one mediocre kind of adaptation that's, like, you know, does the manga, and you have another one that, like, actually does an adaptation that, like, translates the manga into animation in its own distinct way.
Yeah.
It made me so happy as well, because like a lot of people were, again, I've not seen the OVA, so I can't commentate on its actual quality, but a lot of people were really bummed out when the Xebec were passed over for the full series in favour of Studio Pierrot. But like, it turned out better, so I've just been like, Nina Nina to everybody.
Yeah, I honestly think this perception of Pierrot being like a bad studio in terms of like their production quality has been like misplaced, especially in recent years, because they have such great staff working there now. Like, you watch the tail end of Naruto Shippuden and then Boruto now, and then all the other shows they're doing, and like, they have really great animation. They have really great directors that, like, know how to do interesting things with the material. I think that Pierrot was a really great studio for Black Clover. Maybe it wouldn't have been a couple of years ago when the resources were stretched thin, or while working on more projects at once. Like, back when they were doing both Shippuden and Bleach at the same time. Two long runners, which were, you know, dividing their resources thin. But, like, now, I think, now that they're also adopting the strategy of, okay, we're gonna do more seasonal shows. We're gonna keep Naruto as a long runner, because the audience is there for long-running Naruto. But for all these other shows, it's just a much smarter decision to do seasonal releases rather than the continuous
I get
project.
really confused by Pierrot's reputation, because people go on about how, like, oh, their recent shows haven't been very good, but they're also the studio behind Osamatsu-san, which is, like, one of the most visually experimental anime about right now. And I feel like there's some sort of cognitive dissonance where they go, oh, well, no, it's a different part of the studio, so the rest of the studio must all just be bad except this.
Yeah,
And, like,
but you understand there are different teams at the studio, so why don't you understand that?
It's like you can't paint a whole studio with one brush, and yet Anna Twitter as such really doesn't seem to get this.
Except I gotta say, talking about painting a studio with one brush, Toei, I'll never trust you again. Never. All other studios,
Well, hey, I mean,
alright. Even Gonzo.
I'm so happy that
Gonzo,
Black
I'll
Clover
give you a
turned out
chance.
better than World
But
I'm trying my hardest to think of a show by Toei that, like, I wholeheartedly love.
Sailor Moon Crystal Season 3.
I've not
Toei
really
has
been-
made some good productions. I mean, you watch current episodes of Dragon Ball Super. Like, the early stuff was really rocky, but like where it is now, there's some really awesome looking episodes.
Yeah.
So, I think they've really improved their game.
But this is where it's my
Crystal was
fault for
another
just
one where, like,
not
the
having
first
gotten
few-
past. I've not gotten past episode 4 of Super, so that's on me.
Toei can be a hit and miss studio, but they do have talent working
yeah,
there.
they
I
do,
think, like,
but I'll still never forgive them.
Oh wait, they totally have done a show I love. They did Stop Hibariken back in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, they did Fist of the North Star. I mean, they did a lot of classic shows. You know, I think original Dragon Ball, and even Dragon Ball Z, like, it was really well directed. Like, the pacing was the biggest problem with Dragon Ball Z, but, like, you go back to Dragon Ball Z, and there's some amazing animation in there. It, like, super, you know, I think it looks pretty good, okay, but, like, you go back to Dragon Ball Z, and the animation is incredible. There's a reason they can rebroadcast this show today, and, like, people will watch it over just about anything, it seems. Because, like, it holds up. It looks really good still. It's just that the pacing was not good because they were adapting 15-page chapters every week.
Well, here's my question to you, Sid, to tie this all together. Is the first episode of Black Clover better than the first episode of Dragon Ball Z?
The first episode of Dragon Ball Z, it looked more interesting, I think. I think the first episode of Dragon Ball Z was fine. With the first episode of Dragon Ball Z, you had some really good scenes. Like, that scene where Piccolo and Raditz are confronting each other, that's an iconic scene, you know? That's incredible.
I'm not going to lie.
That's the thing that sells you on the show.
I'm not going to lie, I wasn't expecting a sincere answer. I thought it was just going to be like, well, in Black Clover they didn't go and kill a farmer, so it's not as good. So I actually like your answer a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I think people, and I was guilty of this in the past, people look back at reality and they think about the pacing and they equate that to, oh, this show was not well made at any point. It always had bad animation alongside bad pacing. It was just really bad adaptation always too. But no, there were some really good parts of that adaptation that deserves like more critical attention than I think people have given credit for. I think that the Black Clover anime is also like really well made, and it's worth looking at what is making it work over just criticizing, oh, the story is like Naruto, whatever. Like, I think, to me, it's just so much more interesting to look at how a story is told than the story itself sometimes.
So, I totally agree. There's just this absurd car horn in the background the whole time.
I thought it was some, like, sensor sound at first. Like, wait, what are you trying to say?
Warning that you were getting, like, too energetic about something. Like, it's like an alarm that plays whenever you're getting near, like, cross-account levels of, like, energetic about talking about a series.
I didn't want to, like, let it distract me. That was my point. So really
you made it for your point strong. I'm sorry that I had to go and laugh through the whole thing. Oh, but no, yeah, absolutely great. And I feel like that's actually kind of a neat accidental sort of a through line there, where Black Clover, I think, is going to be deserving of more attention than it's really likely to get for the first episode, because it is a Shonen Jump anime, because it's a Shonen Jump action anime. People are just kind of looking at it and going, say, oh, it's another one of those. But, you know, fingers crossed it'll get more love as it goes on, especially once Yami's on the board, because
everybody loves
Yami.
Oh my god, everybody loves him. And how could you not?
Exactly. He's the perfect dad.
The perfect deadbeat dad.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm gonna be really... I think one of the more disappointing things about the season will be that we won't get to, like, when Yami really established himself as, like, a really great character.
Yeah, that's true. But, you know, hopefully, I mean, they go through the manga by, like, just 13 episode chunks. I think that could be really good.
I feel like the manga's really well constructed for that as well, because of, I mean, Tabata Sensei says it himself, like, has, like, this bad habit of roaring through storylines when he means to take his time, which works really well for short series, because you're never going to have a story that runs past that point.
Yeah.
I definitely think the seasonal format has really been a great practice for studios to adopt. It's worked wonders with My Hero Academia. With Season 1, I think the biggest problem is that because long-running series do play the long game, it takes a while for them to get, like, to, like, the really meaty, like, parts that, like, really hook you. We saw that with My Hero Academia Season 1, which, like, people, like, fine, but there wasn't, like, this big passion for that we saw with the second season.
Yeah, when the second season came out, the series got popular with the first season, but second season aired, and it exploded. It was insane.
Yeah.
Sid, I'm gonna go check what that hockey is.
I'm sorry, guys.
I'll be back.
It's okay, they're enthusiastically agreeing. They're just doing the proper sort of mabam. Great job, Horn,
Yeah.
you know, that's great.
Are you guys talking about Black Clover in there? Honk, honk, let me in, honk.
It's Colton. He's travelled all the way along to join us.
So completely unrelated. Well, not completely unrelated, but if people want to see some fun images on Twitter, Black Clover _off is the official Black Clover Twitter, and the Japanese editor Katayama-san is amazing, and he cosplays Asta, and so you can go see pictures of him as Asta, dressed as Asta, as they watch the first episode of the anime in the editor's room at Shueisha. They have a grimoire ceremony where they're, like, throwing a dictionary at somebody. There's some great stuff on Black Clover _off.
Sounds amazing.
Black Clover's editor is just amazing when it comes to, like, supporting the comic.
Yeah, he is a gift to this world. He's so good.
I really love that interview you guys did with him. Like, he's just so passionate about Black Clover.
He's so passionate.
Really
Like, cool. He and Tabata Sensei are just they're gifts to this world. They're just so energetic and they love it. And I mean, they're both very much Asta type characters. They just go, 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 go. And everything's just, yeah, we can do this. I love them so much.
It really makes me nervous for the inevitable day when they do an editorial rotation and those two aren't together anymore.
Oh.
It's like they've been really lucky. Like, they've gone a few years now without actually having to swap out.
Yeah.
Which is super rare for that magazine as far as, like, it's been recently.
Yeah, like,
so, like, they need to say that they're a strong team.
Yeah, like, come on, just let them stay together because Katayama-san is just so perfect. They're such a good team. Come on.
So I can imagine if he got moved on to like having to edit someone else's comic, he'd still dress up as Asta regardless. Like,
he's like, I could just see him at Jump Festa and people are like, shouldn't you be like dressed as, I don't know, like somebody from Robot X Laserbeam? And he's like, I could, but look at this big sword they made me. Because he actually has Asta's first sword now. And it's super cute.
That's awesome.
God, I love Katayama-san. He's so great.
Yeah, Black Clover _off is the Twitter.
Go check it out.
Yeah, I definitely have to check this out.
Lots of great things in it.
It's just really cool to see so much enthusiasm for Black Clover. I mean, we're definitely seeing some, criticisms, the same that we saw back when the first chapter came out. But I think overall, though, just because the show is made well, we have a little more enthusiasm for it.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope more people will check it out now. There were a lot of terrible rumors before the anime started where people were like, I don't know if I'm going to check this out because people say the manga's, kind of crappy. But hopefully, because the anime is pretty damn solid, people will be like, okay, well, I'll give it an episode. I'll give it, a couple episodes. And hopefully they can get over that hang-up of Asta yelling all the time. But we'll see.
Yeah, it's really the sort of thing where for every person who's like, oh, I've heard the comic isn't very good, I just want to plunk down, like, the latest chapters of it, because it's so much easier to sell people on it with the comic it's become than the comic it starts as.
Yeah, and, like, I don't think the beginning really is bad or anything, but it's like, you have to kind of build up the world and stuff, and you have to establish those characters and stuff, but yeah, like, now that we have all that establishment out of the way, it's just like, yeah, look at these cool characters, and everybody's got cool powers. Oh, speaking of which, I've got a question for you guys. So, I was in the weekly manga recap podcast chat this week, and somebody there was complaining about the different types of magic being the same. So he complained that I think it's Hamon's glass magic is exactly the same as Gauch's mirror magic. And I was like, no, it's not. They're similar, but they're different. But he was very insistent, so I want to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
I don't think any of the magic powers are that similar. Like, I mean, we literally got put in a situation where we were having, like, a sort of mirror match between Finrod and his brother, and their powers are incredibly similar, but they're
way different, right?
Because they're different takes on the idea of teleportation.
Yeah.
Like, one of them is a very aggressive sort to match, like, this sort of twisted, dark character, and, like, the other one is almost still developing. Like, Finral's power it's mostly just been used as, oh, I need to get out of this situation, or I need to get people into this situation. He's not had to be super creative with it until really meeting and working with Asta, and he's, like, developed further and further from there, and it's changed his hair colour, or so he says, which I don't know if that's a joke or not, but it's the best line in the latest chapter, being like, I trained so hard, my hair changed colour.
I think the big difference between Gauch and Finral's powers is that Gauch reflects attacks, and then Finral would redirect, I think, through his portals.
Well, I think every power's significantly different. Like, none of them are used for the exact same purpose either. Like, I mean, even if you take the obvious free power sets where you can say they're exactly the same, Fuegoleon, Merio Leona, and Leopold, thank you. I was trying to use all the fancy full names, and I was like, no. Like, they all have different approaches to using fire magic. Like, Merio Leona's manifests as an actual, like, sort of being most of the time, like the sort of the lion form. Fuegoleon's is very focused, almost laser beam level fire attacks, like, quite literally. And then, like, Leopold's is a sort of a more raw fire everywhere, do what you can.
I guess trained to the point of his siblings. It's a little more rough.
So I feel like with these sorts of things where people go and say, oh, this is like this, the answer just a little cynical towards all the people that say the stuff negative, is it's all about how far you choose to actually read into something. If you're just going to look at the surface, then yes, everything's exactly the same. Black Clover is Naruto. They are the exact, they're both wearing headbands, exact same. But like, or all the magic's the same, or all the magic's the same as the characters in Fairy Tail, whichever approach you want to take.
Ugh.
Like, you get what you put in. If you're looking beyond the surface, you see the flourishes, the nuances, the actual design choices and story choices that really make a series stand out. And because Black Clover is like this epitome of the Weekly Shonen Jump ethos, like, it suffers it more than most, but that's kind of why it's great, is because it's refined the generic nature of a magazine into a perfect comic for me.
It is the epitome of shonen. Like, for me, it has everything I love in shonen pretty much perfectly. And I read it every week, and I'm just, like, so fired up. Even when it's, like, a slower chapter and they're just building to something, I'm still like, yeah, I could do this, you know?
It's hot-blooded shonen set to the extreme.
I mean, even still with its, let's say, stereotypical, you know, shonen tropes, because it is a very tropey series, like, it's got so much going for it. I mean, before recording, we were talking about some of the new characters and how amazing they are. And, you know, you've got your new asshole character that you just can't help but love. He's a jerk, but he's so awesome. Oh, I read a couple people on Twitter saying, like, yeah, you know, this first episode really shows how the character of Asta is just a bad version of Naruto. And I thought about that for a long time. And it really is, yeah, you're not really watching the show. I mean, they're orphans that end up having a big dream, but they're not that similar. I mean, I'm biased, of course, but you see in this first episode, Asta's just working his butt off all the time.
Yeah, well, which is the antithesis of Naruto.
Yeah, I mean, Naruto's just like, he's just goofing off.
Well, that's not completely fair. Naruto was trying, but he just didn't have a whole lot of skill. And, like, his goofing off and, like, last clown antics were kind of like cry for attention.
I understand that. And I don't want to say that it's Naruto doesn't try, but I mean, Asta puts in, you know, like 600% effort. And I think that's one thing that sets him apart, and I'm not faulting Naruto here at all. But it's just one of those things, like, they're different characters. Whereas, yeah, Naruto's doing this to get attention. Asta's doing this for his ultimate goal, you know, and his goal isn't to be popular with people, isn't to get people to like him. It's to be the Wizard King so he can help out people like himself. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's interesting to see people still calling that comparison. Also, people are saying that he's more of an annoyance to everyone than Naruto was, which I definitely disagree, because Naruto was a terror to the entire village, and Asta's just a terror to sister.
Which, you know, is its own sort of problem.
Yes, that's definitely a problem, but...
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally still a problem for him now. Like, he's grown, there are characters who are, like, attracted to him, but the thing that will always get in the way is this childish dream of wanting to marry a nun.
I love that so much. He's got this growing, like, harem that he doesn't know about, and he's just like, one day I'm gonna marry sister.
One of my favorite lines from Asta is during the hot spring chapter, where, like, I forget who's suggesting they should look at the girls at the hot spring, and Asta's like, my heart only belongs to sister. I categorically refuse to look.
The chapter, like, they're all like, oh, okay. And then, like, the chapter ends right there or something. Like,
yeah.
It's so ridiculous. Oh, Asta, I love you so much.
Overall, we think the Black Clover anime adaptation is pretty darn good. There is one more point I want to mention about it, though, in that the practice of splitting the first chapter between two episodes. This seems to be a very recent practice. We saw it before with My Hero Academia. I just wanted to get your thoughts on this practice and whether you think it's like a good strategy and whether it worked for Black Clover in this case.
I was kind of hoping they wouldn't split it, but the place they split it at is an excellent place because it really builds up that tension, like, oh, look, he's got a giant sword and now, you know, now stuff's really starting. That said, I don't know what they're going to do for the second episode because it's like you finish the, you know, the battle and then I think they go directly into the entrance exam, and like, are you going to split up more of the entrance exam? Or are you going to actually go into the entrance exam? Or you like, what are you going to do to fill the rest of that episode? So like, I don't mind that they split it up so much because it was a good spot to end. That said, will it cause problems for the future? I'm a little worried.
My guess is that, like, the first half of the next episode is going to be, like, them showing the entire flashback with Yuno and Asta
okay,
as
no,
kids.
that sounds okay. I thought you were going to say they were going to, like recap the first episode, and I was like, no, it's no.
Oh, no. That would be a bad start.
Okay.
Second episode.
That I could get
That'd be a terrible idea.
That I could see.
Yeah, but it'll be that part and, like, Asta beating the chain guy, and then the second half will be, like, the beginning of the entrance exam.
Overall, I thought the pacing in the first episode of Black Clover was really well, so I don't mind this practice. I actually thought, the end point of this episode was much stronger than My Hero Academia's first episode set point.
Yeah.
Which, to me, like, I didn't feel like there was really a big climax in the first episode of My Hero Academia. But, like, with Black Clover, yeah, you get that climax. He gets his grimoire, he gets the sword, you get, like, the tease that the 5-leaf clover represents the devil. So you get, like, a big moment to end that episode, and that's, like, yeah, selling point. And then at the end of the first episode of My Hero Academia, I felt that just ends with, like, him, like, tagging along with All Might. So it's like...
My Hero's premiere ending just feels like it ends abruptly, because it's like, if I recall, it ends on, like, Midoriya asking, All Might, like, can I be a hero?
That's also a pretty good place to end, but it's not as satisfying than what Black Clover is.
And I feel with that, like, the first chapter of MHA, I feel, is a much better experience in one go, where, like, here, I guess, like, just the way they executed Black Clover here is just, like, they ended on a good spot because it's just building up the suspense for the actual battle. MHA's, like, first chapter doesn't really have, like, a big battle per se. I guess it does have, like, the slime monster and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's the whole big picture of that, and, like, Deku trying to be her and All Might kind of embracing his own heroism.
I mean, they're good episodes. I just feel like the first 2 episodes of My Hero Academia should have been, like, a 1-hour special.
This is exactly what I was going to say about Black Clover. Like, I'm totally fine with where it ended. Like, I realized it was going to happen early on into the episode, and I came to terms with it. I went through my 5 stages, and I was like, sure. But it really would have, I feel, benefited them to have run 2 episodes at once. As difficult as that can be with the way time slots on television work, I think it's a lot to ask people to wait 1 week for the first big fight of a series.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, I think that with the premiere of a series, it might have been interesting if they could have done 1-hour specials, but given the way time slots work in Japan, I understand why they didn't do that. In general, it's pretty rare. I mean, they did it for the Fate series. But
Fate's, like, huge.
I guess that's a different animal altogether, for sure. But I think that about wraps up our thoughts on the first episode of Black Clover. For sure this time. I mean, there's still some Twitter comments if you guys want to, like, address.
Sure.
Okay, so, let's see. We did get you had a very long conversation with your Yozua boss on Twitter yesterday, Maxie, that we can use to address some criticisms of Black Clover, too.
Yeah, she really didn't like Black Clover. I think the thing in Yuro's case, though, is that she really hates Naruto. Yeah.
I do feel a lot of Naruto hate is very reactionary and very unfair. And I think, like, a lot of the comparisons people are making between Black Clover and Naruto is, like, in an unfavorable light for both series, because by comparing it to Naruto, they're comparing it to something that they think is bad. But, like, it should be a compliment to compare Black Clover to Naruto, because Naruto was really good. And, like, that first chapter of Naruto is, like, one of the best first chapters of any Shonen Jump series, I think. I mean, I think the one big tread between some of these Twitter comments we got, especially in the conversation you, Maxie, had with your Zua boss, is that people are put off with the marketing of Black Clover as the next Naruto.
But here's the thing, it's not the marketing, it's from one interview, and people don't understand how marketing works.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's more the perception that, people are hyping this as the next Naruto. But it's not, like, on the part of Jump itself. It's not the part on Shueisha itself. It's just the fans, the community is like, this is obviously trying to be the next Naruto.
I also think, like, the way that people are interpreting the next Naruto to means literally being a copycat or rip-off of Naruto.
Yeah.
Which I don't think even in that interview that's what they were meaning. I think they were meaning, like, they wanted to be the next Naruto in terms of popularity. They want this to be, like, the flagship shonen.
Yeah, they've lost 2 of the big 3. They lost Bleach, and they lost Naruto, because they ended. So, I mean, there are lots of really good series in Shonen Jump, and Black Clover's a type of series that could be strong for a long time, because just the wealth of the world in Black Clover, there's a lot of possibilities for stories. So, it'd be great to have it as another flagship for the magazine. There's nothing wrong with that.
In terms of Battle Shonen, like, Shonen Jump in Japan has been pushing MHA, Black Clover, and now recently Kimetsu no Yaiba really hard. These are the series that they want to be like the next One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach.
Yeah.
And I do think it's a little hypocritical of people to complain about them pushing Black Clover when they push My Hero Academia just as much, if not more so. And even if you might like one of those series more than the other, that doesn't mean, like, the other series doesn't also deserve to be popular if it, is appealing to people and people are getting something out of it.
The weird impression people have of Weekly Shonen Jump in Japan, of it being a directly competitive magazine, which it isn't. This kind of comes back to the whole misunderstanding of how the table of contents works. It drives a lot of people to take an us versus them attitude. They see it as like the console wars, but for comics, not that either of those are a real thing and both are tragically awful. So, like, if you like My Hero Academia, you can't possibly like Black Clover. But the thing is, I adore them both because they're 2 very different approaches to the next generation of shonen action and what that could mean. Kimetsu no Yaiba as well. Like, if you really want to compare them to stuff, like, Black Clover does have that sort of Naruto vibe. My Hero Academia, of all things, reminds me of One Piece, how it can be, like, both deadly serious and a goofy-ass comic at the same time. And not that you should really draw lines between this comics like this comic, but, like, in the way they're pursuing the success of how they're marketing them, how they're trying to put them out in the world, you have those, and then, like, Kimetsu no Yaiba's out as the sort of Yoshihiro Togashi-esque oddity. Like, I always find those figures, and, I mean, heck, this is my weird assertion I have to keep constantly making to people. I'm convinced that Boruto as a comic is taking a lot more from Bleach than it actually does from Naruto. Like, as far as inspiration goes. A lot of that comes from the how it shies away from using tones, how backgrounds are secondary to the action. Like, it's a stylistic thing more than anything, which explains why Boruto is incredibly cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I mean, which has been my sort of weird assertion with that comic for a while. It's not the most amazing comic in the world. I feel like the cartoon actually handles the idea better by making it more of an all ages fun thing, but it just is kind of slick and stylish. In that same sense that Black Clover, I think, as a comic, is always going to be, like, compared to its own show, is always going to be the sort of the detailed, more dense version of a story, where the anime that seems to be willing to let it breathe and try and turn it into something a bit more accessible.
That's a really good point. But yeah, I think just overall, you don't have to hate Black Clover if you love MHA. Both things can exist and can be popular and entertaining for different people at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, you can hate both MHA and Black Clover and like Kimetsu no Yaiba.
This is all fine. As it goes, it always has to be said, because people forget this a lot in manga and anime fandom. It's okay to like or dislike something, and that just be how you feel about it. You don't have to even project it to world and be like, well, that's just my opinion. You can just feel a way about a comic and not have it matter. It's great.
So one thing, and I've spouted this a million places, a million times. One thing that kills me about people that hate on Black Clover is the hypocrisy of them hating on it. Because, like, if you don't like it, you don't like it. You don't have to tell me why you don't like it. You know, like people have told me, like, I just don't really care for World Trigger, and World Trigger is my star child. You know, but, like, I'm fine with people, I'm sad with people don't like World Trigger, but, you know, whatever. But, like, when people tell me they don't like Black Clover, it's always like they have to qualify it. Like, I don't like Black Trigger.
That'd be interesting.
That'll be the next cross epic, won't it?
Like, I don't like Black Clover because it copies Naruto. I don't like Black Clover because this and that. And, like, you don't have to, in my opinion, make up reasons to hate a series. You just don't like it.
Yeah.
Whatever,
It's
So,
fine.
but yeah.
It's in a magazine with 20 other comics. You're not going to like them all. I certainly don't. You just don't have to make a thing of it.
Yeah, it doesn't. I had to say this on Twitter the other day because I see it all the time. Guys, liking something cool, or liking something popular doesn't make you cool, and disliking something popular also doesn't make you cool.
Exactly.
Like, I've seen people like, well, I see so-and-so's popular. Well, I'm not into that. Like, okay,
Also,
whatever.
In conversation about it as well, there's a level of disingenuity about a lot of things. And the one that gets me the most is people going, oh, well, I don't care about this comic, or I don't like this comic. And, being kind of laissez-faire about it. But they're doing that a million times a day because they really want you to know that they don't care about it. And it's like, why? Don't...
Yeah, like, hey man, that's cool, but I don't need to hear that 80 times.
Yeah.
Like, I like it, I'm sorry.
Let people like stuff. Like, I mean, I think, over half of us here at the least have probably had bad things to say about Fairy Tail in our time, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say all of us then. But at the same time, we don't go around telling other people, oh, it sucks. We just go, oh, I don't like it. And then, I mean, let's be honest, don't talk about it very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only read like the first few years of it. I'm not going to turn around and go like, oh, it's an awful thing. I'm just going to go, yeah, I own like 45 volumes for a charity bundle and I can't bring myself to read them. That's fine.
That was that Humble bundle?
Yeah, I've never felt like I've got a better deal that I'm never going to use. I read the first year of it and I got to the point where it was the first storyline I really liked that introduces the Metal Dragon guy and stuff. And I was like, I really remember liking this. I best not read it just in case. And I felt really happy about that. Because I feel like I've protected a really nostalgic memory of enjoying that when it was first coming out from Kodansha.
Oh, you're a precious thing. I'll put you on the shelf and never touch you again.
Just like 90% of the manga I own.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, 90% of the manga you own on shelves is like 2,000 books, so...
That's true. That is really true.
Oh, those Ultimate Muscle volumes. Still innocent and...
We're gonna read it at some point.
Eventually.
For a podcast, I'm sure.
Oh.
Yeah, we definitely have to invite you on.
The weirdest part of collecting Ultimate Muscle, because I have the first 16 volumes, and Velo, do you have like just an assortment from all over the place? Is learning how much, for lack of better phrasing, the pre-Annalise volumes, learning how much they're worth at the moment, or rather how much people charge for them.
Yeah.
Like I've got volume 6 in pretty good condition. According to Amazon like marketplace stuff, I could sell that for like £300.
Volume 7, Annalise, goes for over $100 now.
Oh my god.
And again,
and Volume 9's over $200.
Not to say that it reflects on your work at all, but it seems like the later volumes are still pretty accessible. So like, clearly your influence meant that people were like, oh yeah, no, we have to make sure they buy this cheap to see the good lettering,
Yeah, no, they're probably like, oh no, I don't want that. Oh god, oh no.
It's I mean, or if I want to be harsher to a series that I do love, but I'm aware of its flaws, it's probably around the point most people got sick of it. Like, I love Ultimate Muscle, but boy howdy, is it what it is? It's definitely a comic that ran in Weekly Playboy for a few decades. No, 5 years.
Where Kid Muscle poops on a guy with a toilet head.
Oh my god. What was that guy from like the Aztec Empire or something?
Yeah, all the poop people have an Aztec connection.
I was like, I just don't understand how he's like a toilet, but he's like Aztec?
It doesn't have to make sense.
There's a lot of things I did not understand.
Were the Aztecs into scatology?
Grown businessmen call into a radio show in Japan to submit their ideas for Kinnikuman characters to Yuda Tamago. And oh my god, like this was obviously, it started when the readers were children, but now you get all these older people who just have the most deranged ideas for new characters.
Yeah, doesn't Yuda Tamago still take like design suggestions?
Oh, 100%. Like even now they're back to doing the original Kinnikuman again. They're still taking ideas from grown men on the radio. It's great.
Yeah, because I remember them doing like a contest thing like right before the new arc started a few months ago.
But now we've massively gone off the rails.
Long tangent about Kinnikuman Ultimate Muscle. We definitely have to talk about this more at length at a later date. But to wrap up the point we were making earlier, I agree. We don't need to qualify why you dislike something if you dislike it. I definitely think that to various extents, like, we all have been guilty of this, especially when we were younger and just getting into fandoms, maybe. I know, at least I was.
Oh yeah, I mean, I used to be the
here.
worst tool on, like, several manga forums, because I was right about everything, and I surely was. No, I was an arsehole. Yeah, and that's kind of another thing as well. A weird realization you kind of get as you become the older side of these social groups is, these people are just kind of making the same dumbass opinions that you made when you were younger, and that's fine because that's kind of part of being young. I'm turning into a crabby adult age man who's just like, no, please don't. I just want to like the thing.
I look back and I go, oh god, no, don't be me. Don't be me. Oh, I was so awful.
I think at a certain point you realize that there are just some things that won't resonate with you. And it's not because those things are necessarily bad. They can be pretty good and appealing to a lot of people. But for some reason, and this is going to be very specific to every person, everyone will be different in terms of how to react to a piece of work. But sometimes you just won't respond to a work that other people seem to really enjoy, and you just won't get it. But that's okay, because there are other things you can enjoy, and they can enjoy what they're enjoying. And it's all just good, because they're all bringing happiness to people in the world, and they're not doing harm to anyone. They're just bringing joy.
Yeah.
Now, there are some pieces of media that I do think are admittedly, like, have bad messages.
Oh yeah, like,
so
say...
in those cases, I think you do have legitimate complaints you can make about those. I think that there's so much misplaced hatred against series that people just say, oh, this is quote-unquote generic, which is, I feel, a very overused term.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that, does not need to be there. So it's not doing, like, anything that's appealing to you right now in a really, like, emotionally engaging way. But that's fine, because it's not doing anything that's wrong either.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between railing on Black Clover for not much at all and a slightly more righteous thing, like being annoyed that a Disney-owned publisher would choose to go and team up with a weapons dealer. That you can be annoyed about.
But, that was bad news. Oh boy, Marvel. That's a whole can of worms.
It does well to set a scale. You kind of go, that's the end you can be enraged about and hate a company forever for. Maybe a comic being just not your bag, maybe that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's a lesson we all come to learn.
I mean, that's a terrible way to argue my point, but I just really wanted to be mad about that for a few more seconds.
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty absurd thing that happened. I was like, what are you doing, Marvel? But let's not focus on that. Just to wrap up this point, is that if you, like, really have this venomous hatred for a series like Black Clover that you see that is really popular, but you just don't get it, and this especially applies to, like, people who are, like, really, like, negative about media for, younger audiences. Just step back and think about, like, why am I getting so angry about this thing that is giving joy to people, and especially, like, the audience it's made for? It's fine. I don't have to engage with this. It's not an attack on me that this is popular, and I don't enjoy it.
I think we're probably risking it a bit preachy here as well, so should we, like, change gears?
Yes, I think so. I think just to wrap up the show, I think we can all recommend the Black Clover anime to fans of Black Clover.
Yeah.
I want to thank you guys for coming on and giving your first impressions on the first episode. This was a really great conversation. I think we touched upon a lot of great points about what was really interesting about this first episode, and then some of the discourse behind it. And yeah, I think it was really fun to just talk to you guys again, because it's been a while, and I always love talking to you guys.
Yeah, this has been fun. Thanks for having us.
It's been good.
So I guess we'll close off by asking where people can find you guys. And Lisa, where can the good people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Kaito_Ace. That's KAITOU_ACE. I'm there always. Always.
And are there any, like, upcoming graphic novels that you've worked on that you really want to promote?
Well, Volume 17 of World Trigger just came out. So go pick that up. We have one more until we reach the hiatus.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
important to
that
go and keep
hiatus.
this series in like people's consciousness. So
Yeah.
100%. Remember
Please.
World
Don't
Trigger?
let it fade
Continue to
away like
support it.
bees.
I went to my local Barnes and Nobles the other day. I was so sad because there were no World Trigger volumes on the shelf, and I was like, "Oh
Yeah,
man."
they used to have like an entire like section like dedicated to World Trigger. At least
Well,
like a few.
there were a lot of
rows.
volumes there.
Yeah.
Now there are none. It's sad.
So sad.
So please buy more World Trigger.
Please
And,
buy World Trigger.
oh man, please return Ashihara Sensei.
Yes,
We
come
miss
back
you.
to us. So that's coming out. Like I said earlier, Children of the Whales is coming out in November. I'm working on a couple other things, but they'll be out later, so no use pimping those yet.
Awesome. And I also encourage everyone to once again subscribe to Weekly Shonen Jump. It's a great digital service. Annalisa letters Black Clover in the magazine,
And Robo, also very important. I forgot, but coming out, I believe this month digitally and in December physically, is Astra Lost in Space.
Yes!
Definitely read this series. Get on it right now. You can read it for free on shonenjump.com. The chapters will be taken down once the volumes are out. So you'll be able to read like the first couple chapters for free, but the rest of the first volume's chapters will be taken down. I'm pretty sure about that. So go read it right now. You can read everything that's out for free. It's super good. Please love it.
Seriously, I read 36 chapters in one sitting. Like, I only meant to read
Jesus,
6.
Max.
It's so good. You can't miss this one.
Yes, definitely go read Astra Lost in Space. Those chapters will not all be up for free for too much longer. But when the volume does come out, go buy the volume too, because it's definitely a deserves your support. It's an amazing series. Yes, really exciting stuff. And Maxie, how about you? Where can the good people find you?
You can currently find me on Twitter at MaxieTheBee, where I'm mostly just kind of posting stuff up from a lot of Japanese comics that I'm gonna say reading. I have to say I am reading them in the most broken possible understanding of the language. I've this year I finally decided to take learning Japanese seriously for the first time in my life, and it's hard. But it's been very interesting. It's been nice to kind of be showcasing comics that don't necessarily get a lot of attention, especially ones that don't even get, for lack of a better phrasing, fan attention through scans. Aside from that, I'm not really doing anything right now because I'm not sure what I want to be doing. I've kind of stopped doing anything resembling podcasts independent of appearing on other people's stuff. Just because I don't know if it's the work involved with it or anything, but I've just kind of gone like, I need to just, if I stop and don't pretend I'm doing it for a while, like if I don't just keep going, oh, there's stuff coming up, then it means I'm taking a proper break and I can come back to it when I'm actually doing stuff. So look forward to that in the year 2022.
Sounds like a nice break. I like it.
It should do me well. There's nothing worse than being a person who's done podcasting for almost a decade but has never liked the sound of their own voice. Although who does, really?
No.
So yeah,
I love
find
the
me on
sound of
Twitter.
your voice, Maxie.
Yeah,
Me
your voice
too.
is so cool.
Thank you.
Soothing.
I love Friendship After Victory, and I'm very excited for whenever it will return. But in the meantime, I just love talking to you on our podcast, just in general.
Indeed, I'm an amazing guest because I'll always say something really incendiary about the usual sort of audience you guys cultivate.
And you, Weeward, where can people find you?
Yes, people can find me on Twitter at VLordGTZ, that is VLORDGTZ. I'm usually just posting about whatever manga I'm reading or just whatever I'm doing. Right now I'm trying to do like a read-through of Tokyo Pop's release of the original Lupin manga, but yeah.
That volume where Lupin decides he wants to just give up being a thief and randomly decides to go to college. It's still one of my all-time favorite volumes of manga, though, because it's an amazing random storyline.
Yeah.
That's like the 7th volume. That's definitely one of my favorite manga volumes ever.
But yeah, if you want to talk about that or JoJo or Conan, just go hit me up on Twitter.
And as for me, you can find me as Luramiyasha on Twitter, Animation Revelation, my anime list. Basically, wherever you see a guy called Lum Ramayasha, assume that it is me. Hoping to do some more reviews for All Comic coming soon. I definitely got a stack of books beside me that I'm just really interested in reading.
We're always drowning in manga.
Yeah, I have
It's a
some
curse.
other priorities I'm working on right now, but really hoping to get back to reviewing some manga soon. And as for the show, you can find Manga Mavericks on Twitter at manga_Mavericks. You can find it on Tumblr at mangamavericks.tumblr.com. You can find us on iTunes, and you can find us on YouTube. And you can also send your feedback and suggestions to us through email. Our email is mangamavericks@gmail.com. We love reading your guys' questions and also hearing your feedback. So please make sure to do that as well. Send us your thoughts on this podcast, whether you want to see more first impressions of anime or just more anime reviews in general. But yeah, we got a lot of great shows that we're doing. Manga Mavericks and Movies is probably the most regular show that's going out right now.
You have like 20 of those on backlog.
Yeah, we literally have 20 of those that we recorded. I just haven't released yet. But I think that does it for the show. I guess I'll mention that you can also follow All Comic on Twitter at all-comic. And, of course, go to the site, all-comic. Great content on there as well. Lots of different great comic reviews and stuff. So, definitely, support the site. And that basically does it for this podcast. It took a lot longer than I predicted it would. It was a great conversation, though. So I'm really happy. I'm glad to talk with you guys again. And for the audience, we'll see you next time. Sayonara, guys.
Bye.
Later.
Arrivederci.